The cart was gone. Not borrowed, not misplaced. Straight up vanished like it had grown wheels and driven itself into the Bermuda Triangle. And I knew exactly who took it. The same woman who once fined me for leaving my garden hose too emotionally aggressive in color. Karen, the new self-appointed overlord of our HOA, had finally outdone herself. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the cart she just jacked wasn't your average Sunday gardener's utility ride. No. This baby had been engineered like a NASA rover. Solar panels, encrypted GPS, motion-activated camera, and my personal favorite feature, a remote kill switch that could stop it mid-roll like a bad soap opera scene. I didn't just build that cart. I became that cart. And Karen? She'd just declared war. It all started 2 months ago when Karen got herself elected as the new head of the HOA after the previous president retired and moved to Florida. At first, I didn't care. HOA drama was like background noise, lawn complaints, mailbox colors, someone's pet rabbit allegedly looking too wild. But Karen was a different breed of neighborhood tyrant. She came in with a clipboard, aviator sunglasses, and the kind of confidence usually reserved for Bond villains and failed Broadway actors. Her first act? A 3-page memo banning unsightly carts, rogue wheelbarrows, and visually chaotic yard equipment. My cart, affectionately nicknamed Beastie, checked all those boxes in Karen's mind. Never mind that it was custom-built, meticulously maintained, and actually used to volunteer for community cleanup days. She hated it on sight. I tried to keep my distance. You can't reason with someone who holds a tape measure like it's a weapon. I had bigger things to deal with, clients, landscaping jobs, and keeping my grandfather's old property in shape. That cart was the heart of my business. It was more than transport. It carried tools, irrigation parts, and sometimes, on hot days, a cooler full of Gatorade for elderly neighbors who couldn't handle the heat. Beastie had character. It had a soul. And Karen wanted it gone. Then came the Friday morning. I found my garage wide open and Beastie nowhere to be seen. At first, I thought maybe I forgot to lock up. But no signs of a break-in. No scratches. No tire marks. Just an empty space and a chill that went right down my spine. That's when I checked my app, the custom app I'd coded myself to track the cart's location. And there it was, parked smack dab in the middle of the HOA's Central Park Pavilion. I blinked, refreshed the map. Still there. Karen had actually taken my cart and rolled it to a restricted HOA-only event she was hosting. She didn't ask. She didn't notify me. She didn't even leave a note. She just straight-up commandeered it like a golf cart pirate. I drove down to the pavilion in my truck, trying to keep my cool. Sure enough, there she was, standing beside Beastie like it was her personal chariot. The HOA board was gathering around, drinking lemonade and nodding approvingly at how environmentally forward her new transportation was. I stepped out and watched Karen's face harden like drying cement. "Oh, I didn't think you were using it," she said sweetly, like she hadn't crossed about 10 different legal lines. "We needed a vehicle for transporting event supplies. You should really consider registering it with the HOA. It's technically unapproved equipment." I didn't blow up. I didn't argue. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. Because the truth was, Karen had just made her biggest mistake. Not only had she underestimated how attached I was to that cart, she had no idea what it was capable of. Beastie wasn't just a tool, it was a trap. And she had just walked right into it. Back home, I sat in front of my laptop and brought up the dashboard. Live GPS? Check. Microphone audio? Oh, very check. Apparently, Karen had been using the cart like a gossip booth. In just the last 30 minutes, I had her recorded saying the board members were dim-witted leeches, calling one resident's baby a future delinquent, and joking about raising HOA fees just to teach the neighborhood a little discipline. And this was just the first 30 minutes. I leaned back and let out a low whistle. Karen wasn't just on a power trip, she was on a kamikaze run. The thing is, I wasn't out for revenge. Not exactly. I just wanted to teach her that actions have consequences, especially when you steal from someone who's 10 times more technologically prepared than your HOA rulebook has ever dreamed. So I pulled up the control panel and activated turtle mode. It was a setting I'd added for fun, which limited the cart to 2 miles per hour and made it beep like a 1997 Tamagotchi every 15 seconds. I imagined Karen's face when Beastie slowly sputtered around her event like it had aged 100 years overnight. And that was just the beginning. I wasn't just going to get my cart back. I was going to make sure everyone in the HOA knew exactly who Karen was and exactly what she'd done. Quietly, methodically, and with just the right amount of public spectacle. Because if you're going to play games with someone's livelihood, you better be ready for the moment they decide to play back. By nightfall, I had compiled an entire folder labeled Karen vs. Beastie, the unauthorized saga. Video clips, audio highlights, GPS breadcrumbs, and I was just getting warmed up. I scheduled a few anonymous posts to the neighborhood forum, gave the folder a nice, juicy title, and then I waited. The kill switch wasn't just about stopping the cart. It was about starting something far more entertaining. Karen thought she could get away with taking something that didn't belong to her. She thought the HOA protected her. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that she'd just picked a fight with the one neighbor who turned his cart into a rolling fortress of data, dignity, and digital revenge. And I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to a group chat explosion from a few neighbors. Screenshots, blurry photos, and laughing emojis flooded my phone. Karen's grand HOA event had not gone quite as she envisioned. Apparently, sometime during the group toast at the Neighborhood Renewal Pavilion, her majestic ride, my cart, had sputtered to a crawl in front of everyone and let out a high-pitched squeal every 15 seconds. She tried to brush it off as eco mode, to show off its efficiency, but the cart's top speed barely outran a turtle with arthritis. Residents were giggling, kids were pointing, and someone even tied a balloon to the back that said, "Just cursed." She had to abandon it mid-event and call 2 maintenance guys to push it to the side. Watching it all play out on video, I could barely contain my laughter. That was Phase 1, public humiliation, mild edition. Now it was time for Phase 2. Karen still hadn't returned the cart. It was currently parked in her driveway, according to the GPS. Not her garage, her driveway. Either she didn't want it near her house after the slow-motion debacle, or she just thought it looked better as HOA proper lawn art. Either way, I saw an opportunity. The cart had a few other features I hadn't yet revealed, including an audio loop system and, my personal favorite, a remote speaker function I'd used once for Halloween to scare trick-or-treaters with ghost noises. By noon, I uploaded a short sound file I'd edited myself. A robotic voice played every 15 minutes through the cart's built-in speaker. Please return stolen property to its rightful owner. Property theft is not covered by HOA privileges. I set it at low volume at first, subtle enough to confuse but loud enough to catch attention. According to my neighbor 3 houses down, Karen stood outside for 10 straight minutes looking at the cart like it was possessed. Then she threw a towel over the seat, slapped the side of the console, and stomped off muttering. I couldn't have scripted it better. But I wasn't done yet. Later that day, I activated the cart's microphone system to listen in. The audio wasn't crystal clear, but I caught enough to know that Karen was fuming. I heard her on a call with what sounded like a board member, complaining that the cart was defective, haunted, and possibly intentionally designed to humiliate her. I almost dropped my coffee. That last one wasn't wrong. Still, something bugged me. She hadn't apologized, hadn't returned the cart, hadn't even addressed that she took it without permission. That's when I got an idea. I wasn't just going to mess with her. I was going to turn the entire HOA against her. I compiled a short video using the audio I'd recorded earlier, Karen trash-talking board members, mocking elderly residents, and boasting that she'd do whatever I want because I practically am the HOA now. I combined it with some harmless, but embarrassingly glitchy footage of her trying to ride the cart during its turtle mode malfunction. Then I uploaded it anonymously to the neighborhood message board under the title, Karen Chronicles Episode 1, Queen of the HOA. Within hours, it had over 70 comments. People were tagging each other. Some asked if it was fake. Others recognized her voice. A few said, "Well, I always knew she was power tripping." Karen, of course, went ballistic. She started deleting comments and then, after realizing she didn't have admin privileges for the whole board, sent out a community email with a subject line in all caps: Fake videos, lies, and cyberbullying. The email was 4 paragraphs of unhinged rambling, claiming she'd been hacked, defamed, targeted, and possibly framed by radical anti-HOA anarchists. She included a legal-sounding threat at the end that sounded like it was copied from a bad TV show. Further interference with official HOA business will be met with legal ramifications. I decided to give her a little break, just long enough for her to get comfortable. Then, one night later, I kicked off Phase 3. I texted my buddy Ricky, who owed me a favor and had a flair for the dramatic. He dressed up in a fake maintenance vest, drove over in his truck, and knocked on Karen's door with a clipboard and a paintball sprayer. He told her, very convincingly, that he was from a cart tagging enforcement initiative and needed to test a new anti-theft paint system the HOA was piloting. Karen, always thrilled to pretend she's in charge of something official, approved it instantly and even offered him lemonade while he worked. As soon as she turned her back, Ricky hit the underside of the cart with a glitter-infused, glow-in-the-dark paintball shot. Scented, because why not? The paint wouldn't damage the cart, but it would stain any surrounding surface for days. That included Karen's pristine concrete driveway, which now had a large pink and gold splash under the wheels spelling out "Property of Beastie." The best part? It glowed at night. I wish I could have seen her face when the sun went down and the cart lit up like a radioactive party favor. According to neighbor reports, she screamed so loud that 2 porch lights flicked on down the block. By the next morning, the cart was wheeled into her garage, hidden again, but I had the footage. Ricky wore a camera on his vest, and I uploaded the video of the entire paint operation, complete with Karen's signature of approval, to Karen Chronicles, Episode 2. This time, I added theme music. The fallout was fast and fierce. The board called an emergency meeting, HOA members flooded Karen's inbox, and someone even posted a meme of her cart glowing with the caption, "Karen's HOA thrown carriage." But just when I thought things had reached peak chaos, Karen did something unexpected. She called the police. I was in the middle of lunch when an officer showed up at my door. He was polite, clearly confused, and holding a complaint form about tampering with private transportation property. I smiled and calmly pulled out the original title, license, and registration for the cart, all in my name. Then I showed him the GPS logs, the footage of Karen taking it, and the emails where she admitted using it for an HOA event without permission. The officer scratched his head, muttered something about wasting department time, and left. Karen had tried to report me for interfering with my own cart. It was only a matter of time now. Her reign was slipping, her support crumbling, and her carefully curated image of neighborhood savior had been reduced to a punchline. But she wasn't out of moves just yet. As I watched her car leave the neighborhood later that evening, I noticed something strange. Her passenger seat was filled with folders and what looked like legal books. Karen wasn't backing down. She was preparing for war. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't done either. Because this wasn't just about a cart anymore. This was about principle. And Karen was about to find out just how dangerous it is to underestimate someone who built their own battleground. Karen was quiet for 3 full days. No public emails, no HOA surprise inspections, no passive-aggressive flyers tucked into mailboxes about unauthorized driveway decor. It was the longest silence the neighborhood had experienced since she took office, and it was both beautiful and suspicious. I knew better than to assume she was retreating. Karen didn't disappear, she regrouped. And sure enough, by Thursday morning, a new notice was pinned to the HOA bulletin board and emailed to all residents under the title, Emergency Board Meeting Regarding Misconduct, Vandalism, and Neighborhood Safety. In the fine print, it mentioned a motion to discipline and potentially expel residents who engage in hostile and deceptive behavior. Translation: she was coming for me. I showed up to the meeting in jeans, a lawn care company hoodie, and a grin. Karen, on the other hand, arrived in full military-grade HOA regalia. Clipboard, heels, perfectly ironed blazer, and a smug expression that told me she thought she had this in the bag. The community center was packed. Apparently, word had spread that things were about to get dramatic. Some folks even brought popcorn. I caught at least 3 teenagers live-streaming it like it was an episode of some trashy reality show, and honestly, it kind of was. Karen wasted no time. She launched into a full-on speech about malicious conduct, cyber intrusion, and the desecration of HOA equipment. She pointed fingers, waved papers in the air, and dramatically referenced the viral videos as digitally manipulated propaganda designed to undermine neighborhood unity. Her voice quivered with righteous indignation. It would have been impressive if it wasn't completely delusional. Then she called for a vote to censure me, an official reprimand that, if passed, could strip me of voting rights, bar me from board meetings, and potentially kick me out of the HOA altogether. Her allies, 2 board members she'd groomed since day one, nodded along. But what Karen didn't know, what she had absolutely failed to account for, was that one of the other board members was my silent ally. Mrs. Green, an 82-year-old retired systems analyst who'd lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone and knew exactly who Karen was beneath all the polished HOA bluster. When it came time for the board to speak, Karen turned toward the room with her usual fake smile, expecting a wave of support. But then Mrs. Green cleared her throat and said, loud and clear, "Before we vote on anything, I think the community deserves to hear the rest of the footage. The unedited clips." She turned toward me and gave the faintest of nods. I didn't hesitate. I walked to the front, plugged in my laptop to the projector, and played the full audio recordings from the cart. The ones where Karen laughed about raising fees just to teach the peasants some discipline. Where she called the neighborhood watch a bunch of twitchy dog walkers with delusions of power. Where she admitted she took the cart because it wasn't locked, so that's basically free game. The room went dead silent. Then came the murmurs. Then the snorts of laughter. And finally, the wave of disbelieving gasps. Karen stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, her hands tightening around her clipboard like she might try to strangle it. I ended the presentation with a screenshot of the cart's registration. My name, my contact, my photo. "Any questions?" I asked, turning back to the board. Mrs. Green looked delighted. The vote flipped before Karen could even launch into another monologue. Instead of censuring me, the board voted to officially open an ethics investigation into her conduct as HOA president. Karen objected, ranted, threatened lawsuits, and even claimed I'd hired voice actors to impersonate her. But it was over. Her grip was slipping fast, and the crowd knew it. A neighbor I barely knew walked up to me afterward and whispered, "I've hated her since she made us replant our rose bushes because they were too red." But Karen wasn't finished. She didn't go quietly. The very next day, she tried to hack the cart. I got the alert at 2:14 a.m. Unauthorized connection attempt detected. It wasn't subtle. Whoever she hired, or maybe whatever half-talented cousin she'd roped into this, had tried to wire into the cart's internal system, looking to override the remote commands and GPS tracking. What they didn't know was that I'd coded in a failsafe. If someone tried to access the root files without the encryption key, the cart would auto-trigger a defense protocol. All control systems would go into lockdown, and the wheels would spin in place. So at 2:17 a.m., just 3 minutes after the hack attempt began, Beastie started doing donuts in Karen's garage. Well, not donuts exactly. It was more like slow, erratic spirals since the cart wasn't built for speed. But the effect was the same. She woke up to the sound of screeching tires and a robotic voice announcing "unauthorized intrusion detected," in increasingly dramatic tones. According to a neighbor who lived across the street, she came out screaming in a robe and flip-flops, swinging a broom like she was fighting off a raccoon. The security footage I managed to retrieve from my remote access system was comedy gold. The next morning, Karen tried once again to spin the narrative. She sent a long, wild email to the board claiming someone had sabotaged her garage, alleging that I had weaponized a personal vehicle and was endangering lives. But this time, no one bit. The board demanded she return the cart immediately and suggested a formal hearing. That was when the real panic began. Karen did something then that nobody expected. She called her cousin, a supposed attorney, and tried to file a civil lawsuit against me for defamation, emotional distress, loss of professional reputation, and, my personal favorite, theft of community joy. That last one might have been made up on the spot, but it was listed, in all seriousness, on the complaint. I wasn't worried. I had every log, every recording, and a printed manual of HOA bylaws that made her look like a walking violation. Still, the fact that she was willing to take it this far told me something. Karen was unraveling. She wasn't fighting for power anymore. She was fighting to save face. And the more she flailed, the more ridiculous she looked. By the time the local news got wind of it, it was already spiraling into absurdity. Cart wars. HOA president accused of hijacking high-tech vehicle was the headline of the article my neighbor forwarded to me. A tiny photo of Beastie, still glowing faintly from the glitter paint, sat beneath Karen's disgruntled mugshot. Well, not a real mugshot, but a photo of her mid-yell at the town hall meeting. The article was surprisingly fair. They didn't call me a vigilante or a hacker. They referred to me as a technologically adept landscaper caught in an escalating HOA controversy. I liked that. It had flair. As for Karen, her war wasn't over. Not yet. But it was clear the tide had turned. The community no longer saw her as a leader. They saw her as what she truly was, an entitled, petty, overreaching mess who got drunk on power and stole the wrong cart. And I was just getting started on the final act. Because if she wanted this to end in a courtroom, then fine. I'd bring the popcorn. And the kill switch. The HOA had officially turned into a reality show. At this point, people weren't even pretending to care about landscaping policies or parking violations. All eyes were on the Karen saga, which now involved legal threats, rogue cart activity, and enough neighborhood drama to fuel 3 seasons of television. But something else was shifting, something Karen hadn't accounted for. The neighborhood was waking up. And when neighbors wake up angry, things move fast. It started with the petition. I didn't launch it. Mrs. Green did. She posted it to the neighborhood forum under the title, "Time for Change. Remove Karen from HOA leadership." At first, I thought it would be a quiet protest, something that would maybe get a few signatures from folks who were tired of Karen's antics. But by noon, it had over 100. People were sharing stories I'd never heard. How Karen fined a family for having sidewalk chalk art, how she berated a teenager for parking his bike too close to the decorative mulch, how she forced an elderly couple to repaint their mailbox because the color was depressing. It was like a collective therapy session. Everyone had a Karen story, and now they were telling them. What made it more beautiful was that it wasn't just digital noise. The residents took it offline. Flyers started popping up on telephone poles and community boards. Someone even printed a banner and hung it from their second-floor balcony that read, "No more Karen, return the cart and your dignity." It became a movement. People were gathering in front yards to talk, meeting in cul-de-sacs, reconnecting over a shared annoyance that had somehow bonded the entire community. I hadn't seen this much unity since the neighborhood barbecue 10 years ago, when someone accidentally grilled tofu instead of hamburgers and started a philosophical debate on the meaning of meat. Karen, of course, was livid. She started calling everyone who signed the petition, demanding explanations, trying to guilt-trip them or scare them into removing their names. It backfired immediately. 2 residents recorded her calls and posted them online. In one, she threatened to revoke trash privileges. In the other, she asked if someone's dog was properly licensed and hinted at possible fines pending. It was like she couldn't help herself. Every time she tried to regain control, she just exposed how unfit she was to lead. The board had no choice but to act. They called for a formal HOA town hall meeting, a special session with one purpose: to vote on a no-confidence motion. If it passed, Karen would be removed from her role immediately. She could still live in the neighborhood, of course, but her power would be gone. No more rules, no more fines, no more HOA emails written like war declarations. Naturally, she wasn't going to go down without a fight. The meeting was set for Saturday night. It was standing room only. Families showed up with lawn chairs. Kids held up signs like it was a sports rally. Someone even brought snacks, bags of kettle corn labeled popcorn for the power trip. I brought Beastie, fully repaired, freshly waxed, and loaded with one final surprise. I parked it right outside the community center, where it could be seen by everyone. A silent reminder of how this all began. Karen marched into the meeting like she was walking onto a battlefield. She wore a red power suit, carried a binder thicker than a tax code, and looked ready to verbally bulldoze anyone who got in her way. Her cousin, the so-called lawyer, stood beside her, clearly nervous and entirely unprepared for the chaos that was about to unfold. She started with a speech. Of course she did. It was 10 minutes of excuses, finger-pointing, and conspiracy theories about how I had weaponized technology to stage a neighborhood coup. She even claimed the petition was fake, signed by bots. When someone stood up and said, "Karen, my name is Janet and I'm very much not a bot," half the room burst into laughter. And then it was my turn. I didn't prepare a speech. I didn't need one. I just wheeled in a portable speaker, hooked it to Beastie's feed, and played one final audio clip. It was short, just 20 seconds long, but it hit like a truck. Karen, in her own voice, bragging to one of her allies, saying, "If they're too lazy or dumb to fight back, they deserve to be ruled. I'm not running an HOA, I'm running a kingdom." The silence that followed was the kind that makes your bones buzz. No one moved. No one coughed. Even her cousin shifted away slightly, like maybe the floor might swallow them both. Karen tried to speak, but the board shut her down. The vote was called. It wasn't close. Not even a little. 4 in favor, 1 abstain, 0 opposed. Karen was removed from her role as HOA president, effective immediately. Her face went pale. Her lips pressed so tightly they disappeared. She stood up, trembling with rage, and shouted, "This isn't over. You'll regret this. Every one of you." And then she stormed out, leaving behind her binder, her cousin, and her crumbling legacy. The room erupted in applause. But even as the dust settled and neighbors started shaking hands and laughing again, I knew Karen wasn't done. She'd lost her title, but not her pride. And pride makes people do stupid things. That night, around midnight, Beastie's GPS pinged again. The cart, which had been locked and parked in my garage, showed movement. For a second I thought it was a glitch. But then I saw the live feed. Someone had broken in. A shadowy figure in a hoodie had climbed into the garage and was now driving the cart down the street. I didn't panic. I didn't even get out of bed. I just reached over to my nightstand, picked up my phone, opened the app, and hit one button. The kill switch. Beastie stopped cold at the end of the street. Its lights flashed. Its horn let out 3 polite beeps. And then the seat ejected upward with a hiss of compressed air. It didn't launch anyone into the sky or anything, it was more of a dramatic bump, but enough to knock the thief off balance and land them flat on their back. The camera zoomed in. It was Karen. Drenched in sweat, dirt on her blazer, her hair wild like she'd just survived a tornado of bad decisions. She looked up at the camera, her expression caught perfectly in frame, somewhere between disbelief and despair. I didn't call the cops. I didn't press charges. I didn't need to. Because by sunrise, the entire neighborhood had seen the footage. And Karen? Karen was finished. Karen didn't show her face for 3 days after the cart incident. Not a peep. No emails. No flyers. No impromptu compliance visits to measure someone's garden gnome for height violations. Her cousin left town quietly, and her garage door stayed shut tight like a tomb. A few neighbors speculated she might have moved out in the night, but I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. She was the kind who'd retreat, regroup, and come back louder, angrier, and somehow even more entitled. So I waited. And as much as I wanted this story to end with her humiliating fall in front of the whole neighborhood, I had the feeling she wasn't done making noise just yet. Sure enough, on the 4th day, a letter showed up at my door. Not an email. A printed, hand-delivered letter on stiff cream-colored stationery. She even embossed her initials at the top like she was writing from a castle. The letter accused me of harassment, intimidation, emotional manipulation, and psychological warfare via technologically weaponized landscaping equipment. It was 3 pages long, included 2 typos, and ended with a threat of legal action if I didn't immediately cease all surveillance, interference, and public displays of antagonistic performance art. Performance art. That's what she called the glitter paint, the kill switch, and the video that played at the town hall. I almost wanted to thank her for the compliment. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because something had shifted in the neighborhood since Karen's fall from power. People had woken up. They had found their voices. And without her iron grip on the HOA steering wheel, they were steering things their own way. We had a new interim board, voted in by a landslide. Mrs. Green, naturally, took the lead role. The first thing she did was repeal 5 of Karen's most ridiculous regulations, including the one about wheelbarrow sizes and the ban on decorative flags during non-federal holidays. She even scheduled a community cleanup and invited me to be the guest speaker on innovative landscaping tools and neighborhood unity. I accepted, of course, and I brought Beastie with me. The day of the cleanup, the air was light. You could feel the difference. Laughter replaced tension. Kids ran around with trash grabbers. Teens painted fences. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years were handing out lemonade and swapping plant cuttings. I gave a short speech. Nothing dramatic, just a thank you for the support and a little encouragement about how we could all look out for each other without turning into petty tyrants. People clapped, someone shouted, "No more Karens!" And Beastie beeped right on cue like it knew its part in the story. That should have been the end of it. But as the sun began to dip and the event wound down, I got an alert from the app. Motion detected. Beastie's camera picked up a figure walking toward it from across the street, fast, deliberate, and holding something shiny. I recognized her immediately. Karen had come back. Not to apologize. Not to speak. But to vandalize the one thing that had become her symbol of defeat. She had a can of spray paint in one hand and what looked like a screwdriver in the other. She must have thought the cart was off, unguarded, maybe even unprotected now that she'd been dethroned. She was wrong. I activated the kill switch again, but this time I also turned on the new feature I'd added 2 nights earlier, a holographic display on the dashboard. It was just a projector with a transparent screen, but it lit up right as Karen raised the can. On it was her face, frozen mid-scream from the last security footage, with the words, "Smile, you're live," blinking underneath. Karen froze. You could see her mind try to decide whether to run, scream, or keep going. She chose wrong. She lunged for the cart anyway, and just as she made contact, the speakers chirped out a new audio message I'd recorded. This vehicle is protected by petty-proof technology. Step away or risk maximum embarrassment. She dropped the screwdriver, then the can, then turned and walked away like a ghost in daylight, her spine stiff as a board, her pace somewhere between a retreat and a forced strut. She didn't look at anyone, didn't say a word. But she didn't need to. Half the neighborhood had seen it. One kid even got it on video. The next day, her house went up for sale. The listing was online by noon. No showings allowed, as is condition, priced for a quick sale. 2 days later, a moving truck pulled into her driveway. She didn't pack much. Just the essentials, plus a stack of legal files and what looked like a box of leftover HOA trophies. I didn't speak to her. She didn't look my way. But as the truck pulled out of the neighborhood, someone had taped a sign to the back bumper that read, "Watch for carts." Karen was gone. It was surreal how quickly peace returned. Without her constant surveillance, people stopped worrying about the color of their flower pots or how many guests they had over. The HOA became what it should have been, a resource, not a regime. Beastie became a bit of a local mascot. Kids asked to take turns riding in it during events. I even added a barbecue tray to the back and started hosting block cookouts. The first one drew more than 50 people. One neighbor brought homemade ribs. Another brought speakers and played 80s hit. Someone joked that I should run for HOA president. I politely declined. But I did keep one tradition alive. Every now and then, usually when the neighborhood needed a good laugh, I'd plug into the cart's projector and play a short highlight reel. Nothing cruel, just the classics. Karen's failed escape on the kill-switched cart. Her speech meltdown at the town hall. The hologram moment with the blinking caption. People cheered every time. Not because they hated her, but because it reminded them what happens when someone tries to rule with fear instead of respect. And maybe that was the best part. Karen thought she'd take power and never let go. She thought she could bend a neighborhood to her will. But all it took was one cart, a little tech, and a whole lot of patience to show her that you can't control a community forever. Not when they're paying attention. Not when they've had enough. Karen may have taken my cart, but in the end, she gave me something far better, my neighborhood back. And the next time someone tries to mess with it, well, let's just say Beastie's got a few more tricks up its battery-powered sleeve.